Oh, why hello there, ghoulies. Welcome back to the underworld. Today we're doing a little bit of nature decay. Welcome in. Come rot with us today. Until further ado, let's get back to the podcast. Welcome to my channel. If you love your true crime dark, a little messy, and proudly queer, you're in the right place. And while you're here, be a dear. Hit that like and subscribe button and share it with someone who also lives for the drama. This is LGBT. Let's get back to talking. I'm Nico. Around here, we tell stories about queer lives. The ones that ended in headlines, or never made it that far. Some were victims, some were villains, most were complicated. So, pour a drink, take a breath. Let's get back to talking. London, late 1970s. A civil servant, soft-spoken, polite, the kind of man neighbors describe as harmless. Dennis Nilsen wasn't loud. He wasn't chaotic. He didn't stalk the streets in a frenzy. He invited you in. And that's what makes this story linger. Because this isn't just about violence. It's about loneliness, control, and what happens when someone decides that being alone is worse than anything else. Dennis Andrew Nilsen was born in Scotland in 1945. His childhood? Complicated, but not in the way people like to romanticize. His father was largely absent. His mother was strict, cold. Emotion wasn't something that flowed easily in the house. But there was one person he clung to, his grandfather, a quiet fisherman, gentle, stable, safe. And when Dennis was 6 years old, his grandfather died. Around that time is when something began to shift. Dennis was brought to see the body. Not explained, not softened, just shown. Cold, still, silent. And something about that moment stayed with him. Later in life, Nilsen would describe that image with unsettling clarity. Not just sadness, fascination. Stillness, to him, became tied to peace, to control, to something that wouldn't leave. As Dennis grew older, he realized something about himself. He was gay. And in the 1950s and 60s, that wasn't just difficult. It was isolating in a way that carved into people. He didn't come out. He didn't build community. He buried it. Instead, he joined the army. Later, he worked as a police officer. Eventually, he became a civil servant in London. From the outside, functional, stable, ordinary. But inside, he was deeply, painfully alone. And loneliness became the center of everything. He craved connection, but he didn't know how to keep it. Relationships were brief, transactional, often tied to alcohol and fleeting encounters. Men would come, and then they'd leave. And for Dennis, that was unbearable. December 1978. A man named Stephen Holmes met Dennis in a pub. They drank. They went back to Nilsen's flat. And the next morning, Holmes prepared to leave. That moment, the leaving, triggered something. Nilsen later said that he panicked, that he didn't want to be alone again, so he strangled him. Let that settle. This wasn't rage. It wasn't impulsive chaos. It was refusal. Refusal to be abandoned. But it doesn't stop there, because after the murder, Nilsen didn't dispose of the body immediately. He kept it for days, then weeks. He bathed it, positioned it, spoke to it, created companionship. And that pattern, it would repeat. Between 1978 and 1983, Dennis Nilsen murdered at least 12 young men, possibly more. Many of them were vulnerable, runaways, homeless men, men who wouldn't immediately be missed. He met them in pubs, on the streets, or offered them shelter, food, warmth, a place to sleep, and then he took their lives, usually by strangulation or drowning. But again, it's what came after that defines this case. He kept their bodies, sometimes for weeks, sometimes for months. He would wash them, dress them, sit with them, watch television with them. He was recreating presence. Not love, not connection, control. Eventually, reality intruded, bodies decomposed, and when they did, he dismembered them. At his first address, he buried remains in a garden. At his second flat, this is where things escalate. He had no outdoor space, so he adapted. He boiled body parts, flushed remains down the toilet, stored others beneath floorboards, and slowly the whole building began to notice. February 1983. Tenants in his building would complain. The drains were clogged. Water wasn't flowing properly. A plumber was called. And what they found was human flesh. Police were brought in. They traced the pipes back to Dennis Nilsen's flat. And when they knocked on his door, he didn't run. He didn't deny it. He simply said, "It's a long story." Inside, they found human remains, bags of decomposing flesh, evidence of multiple victims. It was all there, not hidden well, because in a way, he wasn't trying to escape. Dennis Nilsen confessed, calmly, in detail, without visible remorse. He described the murders, the bodies, the rituals, and when asked why, he said he was trying to create the perfect relationship. One where no one would leave. That is the core of this case. Not just violence, ownership. Nilsen was charged with multiple counts of murder and attempted murder. The defense tried to argue diminished responsibility, that his mental state impaired him. But the prosecution focused on something else: control, planning, awareness. The jury found him guilty. He was sentenced to life imprisonment in 1983, and he would spend the rest of his life behind bars. Dennis Nilsen died in prison in 2018. He never expressed meaningful remorse. He gave interviews, wrote about his crimes, analyzed himself, but the victims? Many were never fully identified. Their stories remain incomplete. And that's where this case lingers the longest. Because while Nilsen became infamous, his victims, mostly young, vulnerable, often queer or marginalized men, were almost entirely erased. Dennis Nilsen may have claimed to kill up to 12 people, but there's only been 2 ever confirmed people in that list. One of them is Stephen Holmes, a 14-year-old boy who he killed at 195 Melrose Avenue after being invited back home for drinks. And John Howlett, who was 23, and he was murdered in March 1982 after being met in a pub. Unfortunately, the others were never identified. There's a temptation with cases like this to focus on the psychology, the horror, the strangeness. But underneath all of that is something simpler. People who needed help. People who trusted the wrong person. People who disappeared quietly. And Dennis Nilsen? He wasn't a monster hiding in shadows. He was a man who blended in, who understood exactly how to seem safe, and who decided that loneliness justified everything. That's what makes the story stick. Not just what he did, but how easily he was able to do it. You've been listening to LGBT. Let's get back to talking. I'm Nico, your host, your narrator, your slightly too interested gay friend with a microphone. And every week, we dig into queer lives brushed out of the margins. The victims, the villains, and the beautifully complicated ones that lived in between. If you liked tonight's story, go ahead and follow, subscribe, and leave a comment. Or just whisper sweet nothings into the void. I hear everything. Until next time, pour a drink, take a breath. Let's get back to talking.